What's up, you guys? As promised, Bellator 264 prediction video coming at you guys now.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
Bellator 264 airing this upcoming Friday. We got a main event fight of Gegard Mousasi versus John Salter. Other than that, we got two other fights that I'm pretty excited about. Gonna show you guys a quick little sneak peek. We got Andrey Koreshkov also taking on Sabah Homasi, and Magomedov taking on Raufeon Stots. So those three fights, that's what this card is really all about. I'll touch upon a couple other fights, a couple other things going on with this card, and we'll get to that in a second. I do want to also say, if you guys didn't know this, Fedor Emelianenko will be taking on Tim Johnson. That fight will be taking place over in Russia, October 23rd. Curious what you guys think about this fight. If you guys could hit up some comments here. I'm curious what you guys think about this. Is Timothy Johnson the fight you wanted to see for Fedor? There was a lot of other big names that he could have fought against. There's a lot of free agents in the heavyweight division right now. Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem. There's a couple other names as well. There's some guys out there. I was a little surprised when they announced Timothy Johnson, but that's the fight they're going with. And it's kind of a typical type of opponent for Fedor Emelianenko. Those are the type of opponents that he made his career defeating. Guys that are just average type of fighters that are solid at times, but really aren't the big stars. Later in his career, of course, he did battle a lot of the bigger names, and didn't always fare so well for him. And I will say this: I'm a big Fedor fan. I always was, but you guys know I call it how it is over here. And we'll definitely have a prediction video for this fight coming out to you guys soon. So just take note of that. But I wanted to talk about that real quick. Other than that, before we get into today's breakdown, somebody was in the comment section saying that I'm kind of like a fake Bellator supporter. I just wanted to clear something up. The guy was saying I'm a fake Bellator supporter because I'm always talking about getting their top tier fighters to come over to the UFC. The reason why I say those types of things at times is because when I'm talking about the best fighters in Bellator, AJ McKee, Patricio Pitbull, Douglas Lima, I have talked about wanting to see those guys come over to the UFC if they want to prove that they are the best fighter in the world at their division. If they don't, we'll never really get to know that, and that's just what it is. So yeah, I do want to see some of those fighters come over to the UFC. I'm very happy that Michael Chandler came over to the UFC and we got to see how he's performing. But that being said, I'm still a diehard Bellator fan. I want to see this roster get deeper and deeper. I'm going to be tuning in for every single Bellator card like I have been for the last decade or so. I don't even know how long. I've been watching Bellator forever, and I've always been a diehard Bellator fan. From the first fight with Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez, watching that fight live. I mean, you name it, all types of fights over in the Bellator scene. I've been a diehard Bellator fan forever. So, I just wanted to clear that up here a little bit. And what else? Oh, The Ultimate Fighter. I do want to apologize that I didn't get that recap of last week's episode. I did just watch that yesterday. And actually what I'm going to do is watch tonight's episode as well. And I'm going to combine the last two episodes, these semifinals. So I will put a recap episode. I'll combine those two for those of you guys that have been asking me. And yeah, I'm sure you guys saw my recap for UFC 265. You guys know it was a very profitable weekend. We're gonna take that and push forward towards this upcoming weekend. We're going to be looking for specific plays, whether it's Bellator or whatever else we got out there. There's a PFL event going down, and just keep an eye on that as well. And with no further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, so again, this event is taking place Friday, not Saturday. This upcoming Friday. Location is going to be on Uncasville, Connecticut. You guys know Bellator loves to push these events up in the Connecticut area. And yeah, man, we take a quick look at this card. Like I said, the top three fights it's really what this card is all about. I'm very excited for all those 3 fights. Now, I do have some unfortunate news. We've had a couple fights fall through already on this card. Earlier today, Danny Sabatello, that fight got canceled against Johnny Campbell due to COVID protocols. I believe it was Danny Sabatello who tested positive for COVID. Danny Sabatello is a guy that fought on Dana White's Contender Series, got the victory. He's a very grappling-oriented type of fighter. Dana White doesn't always favor that, especially on that show. He's an American top team product who since got signed with Bellator. Looked great in his last fight against Brett Johns, ex-UFC fighter as well, who also got cut from the UFC. Not that Sabatello was cut, but Brett Johns was cut also for the reason of not having a fan-friendly type fight style. That's the point I'm making. So both those guys had similar styles. They clashed. Sabatello came out on top. Sabatello is a guy that's only 28 years old. That's good. He's grinding over there at American Top Team. He has that wrestling base. I expect to see more elements of his game evolve, and that's a guy that's a serious fighter. I could see him tearing it up in the Bellator scene. So the fight that he had, though, was a mismatch. He was going into that fight around a minus 1250, which was pretty crazy against Johnny Campbell. So, keep in mind, I'm not going to go too much in detail of some of these early prelim fights. Some of these guys are making their pro debuts. Some of these guys, you can't pull up any type of fight tape on them. So, I don't know if you guys want me just to go on about the 2 pictures you could pull up on Google of them. I'm not going to do that to you guys. I'm going to start off with a brief conversation of the Pam Sorensen and Roberta Payam Samad fight. Pam Sorensen is a tough chick. She's been on the Invicta scene for some time. This is a featherweight fight, which is always interesting. Not a lot of featherweight fighters on the women's side of things. And Pam Sorensen has some notable victories. She took out Nico Montano back in the day. Jessica Rose Clark. She has some names on the resume. Well-rounded chick. 8-3 as a professional. She's 35. And she's taken on Roberta Payam Samad, who only has 1 loss, and that was against Julia Budd. And she did go the distance with her. And other than that, she's handled business. Got a victory over in the PFL not too long ago. Her opponent had a record of 3-5. She still has to prove more to me. I'm going to take Pam Sorensen. I think that she's just a well-rounded fighter that has a little bit more experience. And, this is a fight that should easily play out closely. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a closely contested match. But I'll take Pam Sorensen for the fact that, I've watched some of her fights. I got respect for her. And she's been around the block for some time. We go up to the main card. Tai Gwerder taking on Kadzimirat Bestiaev. We saw Bestiaev fight on Dana White's Contender Series. He did lose that fight. That was actually his last professional fight. He got knocked out against Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes has been doing his thing, though, ever since. And before that, he did have 2 victories via submission, showing some submission game. That he has. Before that, loses to Blake Troop. You can pull that fight up on YouTube. Blake Troop, this guy goes across the octagon, or goes across the ring, whatever. It goes across the canvas, whatever it was. But and he goes and he just slams Bestiaev down on the mat instantly, within seconds. Ends up just putting a whooping on him, controls him, hits some ground and pound on him, and finishes him there. That was not a good look for Bestiaev at all. The Phil Hawes fight was not a good look for him either. Definitely has some defensive flaws. And this guy, Tai Gwerder, he's a tricky southpaw on the feet, has heavy hands. I believe he is of Hawaiian descent. Dude, you know how they go, man. They have tough chins. This guy definitely carries some pop in his hands. Did lose 2 of his last 3 fights. And both those losses came by way of decision. The fight that he did win as of recently was against George Tokos. Shout out to George. Cool dude. Chatted up with him a bit. He's also a fellow Greek. Fights over in Bellator. Trains over here at Sanford MMA. Really cool guy. He also has dynamite in his hands, and he could strike. So that was a nice win for Tai there. And, this is a fight. I would say Bestiaev has some holes in his takedown defense and his grappling, and I would also say that Tai Gwerder has some holes in his takedown defense and grappling. So you know what? I think that stylistically, I think the fight kind of edges Tai Gwerder. I think this fight probably stays in the feet for the most part, and I could see Tai definitely teeing off on Bestiaev. I could really see that happening. I could see him landing some heavy shots. He's confident on the feet, and he has power. You could see that he has power. Might not be the fastest with his hands, but he has that power, and he brings it. He could easily clip Bestiaev. I'll take him. I'll take Gwerder to win that fight. All right, we got some heavyweights throwing down. Davion Franklin taking on Everett Cummings. This is a fight where you got one guy who's 15-0 and the other guy's 3-0. But that doesn't really tell the whole story. You know, one guy with way more experience. Everett Cummings, good luck finding tape on this guy. Not a lot of tape on him. 15-0. He has all these fights over in Gladiator Challenge, but I really had a tough time pulling up tape on him. You know, he's coming in this fight 4 inches shorter, 5-inch with the 5-inch reach disadvantage. Davion Franklin is a guy who's only 3-0. If he comes in good shape, if he keeps refining his cardio and his shape, he's a physical specimen. He's a big boy. He has major power. We saw him, you know, in the Bellator cage, you know, landing nasty ground and pound. I wasn't crazy about his cardio. Looked like he was getting a little tired in there in that last fight. But even then, this is a guy that when he's kind of breathing heavy, he's still slamming down the leather. And he's only gonna look better every time that we see this guy. Only going into his 4th professional fight and only at 27 years old. I definitely edge him to take this fight based off that. I like the fact that Everett has more experience, and of course, there's the X factor of not really being able to get much on this guy. But just based on the limited amount of information I can get on him, I'm going to edge Davion Franklin with that size advantage, and you know, I believe also training at Jackson's MMA. So that's a guy that we could definitely see get his game refined and should be able to take out this guy Everett Cummings. But again, you don't have a lot of information to work with there, so be careful. All right, now these are the 3 fights I'm excited to talk to you guys about. Very, very pumped for all 3 of these fights. Definitely be sitting on the couch in front of the screen. My Friday night will be revolved around these 3 Bellator fights here. Magomedov taking on Raufeon Stots. Magomedov is a guy it's not my opinion. I was going to say it's my opinion. It's a fact, whether you like it or not. He's the only guy that's ever actually defeated Petr Yan. I'm not talking about a disqualification, the whole Sterling situation. Magomedov actually did take out Petr Yan back in the day via split decision. Petr Yan did redeem himself in the rematch. And it was a very high-level fight, especially for the age that the guys were at. And how early they were in their careers. I mean, these guys are the real deal. Petr Yan, you guys know, is the real deal. Magomedov is the real deal as well. And it's funny, I remember breaking down tape on that fight way back in the day when Petr Yan was just getting into the UFC. So it's funny. I always kind of had my eyes on Magomed. And, you know, got his brown belt recently from Ricardo Almeida up in Jersey. You guys know they say that Jersey's the new Dagestan. And all those guys up there are just absolute savages. You see Zabit over there, trains with Zabit. And you guys know there's that killer flyweight right now. Was it Valiv that's training over there? There's all types of guys. The list goes on and on. But, you know, he has nasty sambo. He could slam you on your head. He's very, very loose and unorthodox on the feet. He'll throw spinning heel kicks at you. His boxing's good. He mixes it up. He's a legit Dagestani fighter, and I do believe that he's a Dagestani. I know here it says Makhachkala, Russia. I believe that's in Dagestan. Everything that I was seeing from him, I believe he's a Dagi fighter. And you guys know they don't mess around. And he's taking on this guy, Raufeon Stots. If you guys don't know about him, man, Raufeon Stots is a guy, national champion wrestler, 2-time national champion wrestler. So he has the wrestling pedigree to go with the fact that he's been putting in work with Team Rufus Sport. You guys know Duke Rufus is a nasty, nasty striking coach. You know, so he's been working on his striking for quite some time. When you watch him on tape, though, I wouldn't say that I've been necessarily too impressed from anything I've seen from him, at least in regards to taking on the guy like Magomedov. I think Magomedov will be much more comfortable there on the feet, and I definitely edge him there. I'm very interested to see how the grappling exchanges go. That American collegiate wrestling type of style versus the Sambo wrestling type of style. I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out. I guess it depends on the fighters, but, you know, I hate to say it, man, for the most part, those Russian type of Sambo wrestlers really, like, have been getting the edge, in my opinion, as far as when you got 2 guys that are kind of compatible as far as their skill levels. I don't know. Some might think I'm crazy. You guys let me know. Do you agree with that? I mean, those Sambo guys, the really polished Sambo guys, they end up being the guys that kind of out-wrestle some of these big-time American wrestlers. We saw that recently with that Ukrainian, I forgot his name, man. His name slipped my mind. The Ukrainian, is he a champion now? Somebody comment below. I'm gonna have to pull that up myself though. Otherwise, the Ukrainian fighter who I believe is now, yeah, he is the champion. What am I talking about? He just took out Douglas Lima, out wrestled Douglas Lima. Excuse me, guys, brain fart there. Took out Douglas Lima, wrestled with Logan Storley, and was even getting the better of Logan and towards the beginning of that fight. Logan did finish strong in the third round, and Logan Storley is no joke. Minnesota Gopher wrestler. But you guys get my point. Just interested to see the wrestling exchanges. I'm going to take Magomedov to dominate this fight anywhere it goes, but I think that Raufeon Stots is a legit fighter, and like I said, two-time national NCAA champ, number 4 ranked Bellator bantamweight. He gets my follow there, and if he wins, this is a guy that's really going to make a name for himself over in Bellator. And even if he loses, I'm sure he'll bounce back with some victories against other guys. I like the more well-rounded Magomedov, a guy that's more natural with the whole MMA game. He transitions from striking to grappling better, where Stouts is a guy a little bit more wrestling oriented that's trying to work on his striking and seems to be a little bit slower with his hands compared to the diverse striking of Magomedov. And that will take us to our next fight. Andrey Koreshkov takes on Sabah Homasi. If you guys didn't know, Andrey Koreshkov is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I've been a diehard fan of his from way back. We talked about that earlier, me being a big Bellator fan. I was always a giant Alexander Shlemenko fan who actually coaches Andrey Koreshkov, also coaches Tiger Sarnovsky, another guy that I was really, really high on, especially back in the day. His career, didn't pan out as good as maybe it could have. Back in the day, he was undefeated. He was a phenom. But both these guys, such well-rounded fighters. The striking is amazing. They can grapple. They can stuff your takedowns. They can take you down. Like, don't get it twisted. Andrey Koreshkov, he could wrestle you. I mean, he can go out there. He can take you down. He can control you. You think about his fights way back in the day where he was controlled and dominated by guys like Ben Askren. That's okay. Back then Ben Askren was an absolute bulldozer. He would go in there and just mop guys. There's Tiger Sarnovsky right there, Andrey Koreshkov, and the man, Alexander Shlemenko. But, losing to Ben Askren back in those days, Ben Askren was absolutely dominating everybody. If you're new to the fight scene, a lot of you guys didn't realize what Ben Askren used to do back in the day. He was just an absolute beast until he was older in his career, and then eventually came over to the UFC and he ran into some trouble. But Ben Askren, don't get it twisted, an absolute savage back in the day. So he loses that fight. Other than that, though, taking out all these guys and finishing these guys. That's why I wanted to see him come over to the UFC scene so bad. He would go in there and just destroy these guys. Go in there, spinning back kick to the liver, nasty hands, just dropping you, knee you in the head. Look how you finished Derek Krantz, Marius Zaromskis, a very talented striker in his own right. Took out Lyman Good, Noshan Burrell, talented striker. Took out Douglas Lima. He won the first fight. Don't forget that. Took out Benson Henderson. Was winning the first fight against Douglas Lima. Did get finished in that fight, though. Took out Chidi Njokuani, who will be fighting on Dana White's Contender Series coming up this season. The brother of Anthony Njokuani. Shout out to the old WEC. And that's a big victory there. Chidi can strike. And but again, showed his wrestling in fights like that. Just pulled off an armbar over in AMC fights. So, even left the Bellator scene for a minute. The Lorenz Larkin fight, I thought he won that fight, but it was very close, and that wasn't his night there. But now he's taking on this guy, Sabah Homasi. Sabah Homasi, you guys know, he's from around my way. I told you he worked at the male strip club, bumped into him in the bars back in the day. His sister was always hanging around, and I remember when it was a big deal when they were all talking at the bar about him getting his first fight in Bellator. His whole little circle, they used to hang out at the bar over there. And it's funny, now he's actually doing his thing. He's been grinding over at American Top Team for a really long time. When you're hanging around guys like this, Thiago Alves and all those guys, you're gonna become a very solid fighter. And that's exactly what he became. Even in his last fight, he looked absolutely phenomenal in the first round against Paul Daly. And he did fade in the later round, the next round, and he lost that fight. But it was still a good showing from him. And he brings a lot of energy. to the cage, and I think that we're starting to see the best version of him. So if we're ever gonna see a fighter in Sabah Homasi that could ever take out a guy like Andrey Koreshkov, it would be around this time in his career. If it ever were to happen, meaning that I think he's pretty much hitting the prime of his career right now. It's just not going to happen, though. I don't see it happening. Andrey Koreshkov he's going to be the better fighter anywhere this fight goes. I expect him to mix it up and to come in very hungry here and come in and get a nice victory over Sabah Amasi. So, and again, speaking of guys that he's been brushing shoulders with, always around Dustin Poirier, always getting it in with him. That's the reason why his career has really started to shine. He's been putting time in with those guys. But again, it will not be enough. And real quick, I'm sorry, I didn't really touch upon the line in the Magomedov fight. 450, a little surprise in that betting line. That's a pretty high line in my opinion, even though I think he takes the fight. That's a pretty high line against a guy in Stots that's a solid fighter. Oh, we talked about, sorry to bounce back real quick, but we talked about how Magomed only lost one fight to Petr Yan. Raufeon Stots only lost one fight, and his one fight that he lost was against a stud of a fighter as well. Come on, name slipping my mind. The Venom, he has the Khabib hat, the Venom version. Sorry, guys, I gotta pull it up real quick. His lone loss was against Merab Dvalishvili. So just take that into consideration too. His only one loss was against a legit opponent. Other than that, it's taking on everybody. But again, back to the betting lines. I do feel like that line's kind of high, although I expect him to handle business. And then as far as the Andrey Koreshkov line too, is it possibly a little high? I guess so, but I think that Koreshkov handles business as well. So, I mean, it is what it is. That's what those lines are going to be like, man. These guys, you're talking about top-level talent in Koreshkov and Magomedov. So, I got both them winning those fights. And then we're going to go into the main event here. And as you see, another high line, because that's just what Bellator does. They always got these high lines. John Salter, the coach of Joe Selecki. We had the pleasure of chatting up with Joe Selecki. He told us a little bit about what goes on over there. John Salter is no joke. He's a guy that got cut from the UFC after losing to Dan Miller. Jim Miller's brother got cut then and has really been doing his thing ever since he left the UFC. Just to pull up his resume real quick. Since getting cut from the UFC, I mean, goes over to Strikeforce, wins a bunch of fights, loses this one fight against Reggie Pena, but after that, stringing off victories, took out Dustin Jacoby, was able to grapple him down. Brandon Halsey, tough customer. Kendall Grove, had a name back in the day. That was 2017. Jason Radcliffe, Chidi and Jukwani. And so not a lot of big names here, but still winning a lot of fights. Lost to Rafael Lovato Jr. So did Gegard Mousasi. Rafael was the champion. Of course, he had some health issues, so he did have to step away. But at least I don't know what the latest is with him, but Gegard Mousasi, besides that one loss to Rafael Lovato, has been doing very, very good. Look at all these victories. Since that one fluke spinning back kick where he lost to Uriah Hall, where he came back and redeemed himself and finished Uriah Hall, that was a 1 out of 100 loss right there. Trust me on that. Other than that, he goes in there, he dominates all these guys. Vitor Belfort, Thiago Santos, Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, Alexander Shlemenko, Rafael Carvalho, Roy McDonald came in over to Bellator, took him out. The one loss against Rafael, and then now he just took out Douglas Lima and Lyoto Machida. He was too big for Douglas. He has a perfect recipe to win this fight. He just needs to pump the jab, needs to keep this fight on the feet, avoid the wrestling and the grind from Salter, pump that jab all day, and he will absolutely pick apart John Salter. And that is what I expect to see happen. But, no shade to John Salter, a very tough customer. And again, a guy that has nothing but love and respect for Joe Selecki. I know that, and Joe Selecki's an awesome guy. So respect to all those guys over there. You see him over there in the corner with Selecki. Selecki's a guy that I have a lot of praise for. But I don't see John Salter taking out Gegard Mousasi. That's why I like Mousasi to win that fight. The line to me is not necessarily crazy. I guess it's a high line, but in the minus 300 range. But Mousasi's just, he's the man. He's the man. One of the greatest middleweight fighters of all time. You could say he's one of the greatest light heavyweight fighters of all time. He had a lot of battles up in the light heavyweight division as well. Remember, he used to fight over in Dream, over in Pride, all that stuff. Strikeforce. And, he's the man. The Moose. And, he should handle business and continue to dominate the Bellator scene. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up the Bellator prediction video here. You guys know we hit 6 out of the last 7 plays. Things are very hot over here. The UFC event won't be taking place to the following weekend. We're really plotting on our next move over here. We got a good amount of money to work with. We've been bringing in a lot of money. We're plotting over here. If you want to work with me, if you're curious about my pricing, reach out to me. Other than that, please do like this video. Catch me on Instagram, Twitter. It's all there below. Got my email there as well. And if you guys have any recommendations for the channel, any comments, recommendations, throw them all below. And just a little heads up for those of you guys that stuck around, I'll be putting an official announcement out, but I'm gonna start doing a weekly video where I'm going to just answer all your guys' random questions about the fight game. Any questions you guys want, you're gonna throw them to me on Twitter, Instagram, comments below the YouTube video. You can put them under here. I'm gonna save them all up, the best ones, and I'm gonna do a video where I just answer your guys' questions. And we'll think of a cool name for that episode. We'll do it once a week. So if you guys get any ideas, throw them at me. You guys know I appreciate all you guys so much. Nothing but love here to all you guys. And on that note, I'm going to go watch some baseball. Looks like the Dodger game got delayed over here. It's Tuesday night. I'm going to throw the Ultimate Fighter on over here. We'll watch that episode. Got a good one ahead of us. And we got Vince Murdoch. Vince Murdoch taking on the young hungry kid who's only 22 years old, Brady Heiston. Fighting out of Washington. So we got a good episode there. All right, guys. On that note, there's only one thing to do. Signing out. The Teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.